selling a house. With our office doors locked and our essential team members complying with all government protocols, in our own small way, Security Title continues to serve our community.
Hoffaday, this is Kayla from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated team in Guam and the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Cocoa Coffee Company mugs are now here. Show pride for your island as you enjoy your delicious Circle K coffee. Each generously sized 16-ounce mug is etched with Guam-inspired images like Chief Gadao, Serena, Two Lovers, and many more. The Cocoa Coffee Company mug collection is available for a limited time only, so don't miss out. Get yours today and collect them all. Exclusively available at Circle K locations. A portion of the proceeds go toward the Cocoa Bird Recovery Program.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Yeah. You thought you'd never see the day when Tall Tales didn't start with a respectful reading of the Second Amendment. Today was that day. We started with a respectful reading of the first clause of the First Amendment. And although our Second Amendment has been under attack in various quarters nationwide, but not here, our First Amendment, religious freedom, the free exercise clause of the First Amendment is under attack right here on Guam. And I'll get into that a little bit later on when I get into the card, because I've got an item on the card. In fact, it's the first item on the card. It's Commissar DeNorcy versus the First Amendment. So you'll want to stay tuned for that. Not that I'm abandoning the Second Amendment, not that I don't think the Second Amendment is just as important as it always has been. But when it's the First Amendment, then at least today I've got to shift gears and defend our First Amendment rights. We need to defend all of our constitutional rights because, as the real Joe Cruz from time to time says, we have to defend all of our rights, and we can't just assume that because they're in the Constitution or in the Bill of Rights that they're automatically going to be a kind of self-enforcing. So what is that you always say, real Joe Cruz?
While a Constitution may set forth rights and liberties, only the citizens can maintain and guarantee those freedoms. Active and informed citizenship, it's not just a right, it's a duty.
It is a duty, and we do the best that we can to conform to our duty right here on Tall Tales. And from time to time, the real Joe Cruz will remind us in the terms that he just used. Where did you get that from, real Joe Cruz? Who's
Ronald Reagan said that, sir.
Well, who else but, right? Ronald
Yes,
Reagan.
Sir.
Yeah. So if you are a member of our international radio listening audience, you qualify for the first part. You are a part of the informed citizenry. There's no question about that. And if you are a member of the informed citizenry, then the next step is to be an active member of that informed citizenry. So when we see Commissar DeNorcy and her, who is really just a subaltern of our MAGA-HAGA We can't just sit back idly and say, oh, yeah, she said something about the churches. And this goes for everybody, whether you're a Catholic or Protestant or an atheist, it really doesn't matter. No matter what your religion is, when a government or government officials think that they can take a scissors and start snipping away at the freedoms guaranteed by our Bill of Rights, it affects us all. And that's why we have to pay attention to this. That's why I switched the read-in today from the Second Amendment to the First Amendment. Okay, so from there, where do we go next on the program, Real Joe Cruz?
We go to Zemi Kutney, sir.
What does that mean?
That is your backwards play on words. Meaning press the meat. But if you say it in Chamorro, or actually if you say it in Chamorro, it's press the meat. But it's meet the press.
Meet the press in English. Okay, so that's where we're going to go. And as usual, the Daily News has not submitted a ticket to the game, so they're not going to be playing. Rather than do a local editorial, they've got some boilerplate from the USA Today editorial board titled, "To Fight the Virus, Train Contact Tracers." That has a lot of relevance for what we're doing here. Even if it's a good idea, I don't think Commissar DeNorsi would want to do it because it comes from a newspaper. And perhaps after she's finished with the free exercise clause, she'll go to the freedom of the press clause next. Okay, and we also have the Post starting out like this: paging senators in legislative leadership positions. The public is calling you. Now, if I were going to write that, I would probably do it this way: earth to senators, earth to senators. Come in, senators. Yeah. Borrowing a page from the Star Trek book, and the one I like the best, if I were in the midst of I wonder what you call, it's a flock of geese and a riot of crows, right? A pod of whales.
Yes.
A gaggle of something, I can't remember what.
Gaggle of ducks?
I think so, yeah. What would you call a group of senators? There must be some name for them, right? Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, give me a few minutes, and I'll think of something, as to what you call a grouping of senators, right? Okay. So if I were standing in the midst of I guess I'll use gaggle. If I were standing in the midst of a gaggle of senators and I put on my Star Trek helmet, I would probably give it this one: beam me up, Scotty. There's no intelligent life down here. Okay, so here's the editorial from the Post. When Benjamin Cruz was Speaker of the Legislature and chairperson of the Legislative Budget and Finance Committee not long ago, he and his financial team watched the executive branch's spending very closely. A few good people in Governor Leon Guerrero's group of advisors should remember this, because they were part of Cruz's team that was closely watching the then Calvo administration's spending. Cruz still holds a watchdog role now as the elected public auditor, but audits deal with the spending questions and accountability issues after the fact, when the deed is done. Cruz also did what essentially was an effort to hold Calvo government officials' feet to the fire, more than what was customary. He and his colleagues in the prior set of senators called cabinet officials and agency heads to the legislature to answer questions about where money was spent or is being spent, and require them to swear under oath when providing statements to the legislature. The implication was that officials didn't tell the truth, danced around it, or said half-truths. They could be in danger of being charged with perjury or lying under oath. The speakership under Benjamin Cruz brought to light the illegal retroactive pay raises that were approved when Governor Eddie Calvo was in charge at Adelup. As a result, Calvo administration officials who received the illegal pay raises had to pay them back or face prosecution. We bring up this example now because our current set of elected local senators have to speak up louder and step up to their duties more when it comes to the administration's spending of Wuhan virus funds. Couldn't they just pass instead, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, they could, sir.
Yeah. we have some quarterbacks down there whose running game is not that good, but boy, they're tough in the air, right? There will be hundreds of millions of federal Wuhan funds for government of Guam and its people. We need to hear more from Legislative Finance Chair Joe St. Augustine. We need to hear more from Legislative Finance Chair Joe St. Augustine. We need the oversight chairpersons for labor, economy, health, and government accountability to stand for the public. We'd like the legislative leadership to do its job of cross-checking where the money goes, how it's being spent, who's benefiting from the emergency purchases and contracts, and whether the money will benefit the public in general as opposed to select segments of our community. There are so many questions to be asked, and the questions should be asked when cabinet officials and agency heads are under oath. There seems to be an acknowledgement this early from the current Democrat leadership and legislature that the executive branch didn't need to seek pre-authorization from the legislature on how Wuhan virus funds will be spent because Guam remains under a public health emergency. And that just seems to be the magic wand that Lou said she doesn't have. Oh, we're under a public health emergency. Chapter 19 of Title 10 of the Government Code says that I can do anything that I want to, and there's just nothing you can do about it. And that's kind of been the way she's proceeded with the Open Government Law, with the Freedom of Information Act law, with rounding up people and putting them in isolation. Very visible and hard to miss, blocking the highways. So that seems to be her MO. Regardless of the technicality, senators have an obligation to ask questions and get answers for the public whom they serve. They weren't elected to be the rubber stamp of a friendly administration, which, by the way, is what I predicted at the very beginning of this legislature, during the time that everyone was still, ooh, ah, we've got 10 female senators and a female governor. Ooh, ah, how wonderful. That's so great. Things are going to be so nice now. Yeah, oh, we were just right on the front steps of utopia there when we counted the votes. But I was saying that same thing, that they're going to be a rubber stamp. Watch it. They are seated in the Guam Congress building because they are to serve the community as a whole. There are senators in leadership positions who have been quietly sitting on the sidelines or offering token gestures. Their lack of effective action is telling us something. And parenthetically, that's why I don't want to see a 21-senator legislature. Too many, it's too easy to hide, too easy to dodge responsibilities. I think probably we'd be better off with 11 than 15, but that's another story. Okay, the editorials, getting right down to brass tacks here, right down to blue stars. The blue star today, of course, goes to the Post. Another fine editorial by the Post. And in my editorial package, I see the materials that I need to discuss the letter, as it were, the op-ed posted by Senator Titano as a rebuttal to my letter to the editor that was published on the 21st. As much as I'd really like to get into that, I think I've got to do a couple items on the card, and if there's time, I will get into it then. If not, it'll keep until another day. So let's see. I look at my stack VIP. I've got another Joe got there first. He beat Martinez. So I got a phone call this morning. All you folks out there in our international radio listening audience, a little personal touch here to the Tall Tales Latch Up. In the morning, I sit out on my front porch. I listen to the Ray Gibson show. I check my iPad. I actually start my show prep while I'm doing that. And if I am to make a cameo appearance on the Ray Gibson show, the real Joe Cruz will call me and alert me and usually ask me to call back because the phone connection works better that way. Well, this morning when the real Joe Cruz called, I was getting coffee, so I missed the call. So when I got back, I noticed a message on my answering machine. So I turned on the answering machine and it said, "This isn't Martinez." It's the real Joe Cruz.
I think I said, "Good morning, Bob. This is not Martinez."
Who's usually my first caller, right? Yeah. That was very thoughtful of you, real Joe Cruz. Had you not done that, I probably would have gone into the usual tall tales routine with you. But enough of that. Let's find out what another Joe wants to tell us. Hello, another Joe.
Well, I'll tell you, Uncle Bob, I'm glad before Martinez because he's a really intelligent guy that asks really, really insightful questions.
He's a good caller.
That'd be a hard act to follow.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that'd be a really hard act to follow. So, Uncle Bob, it seems that the impression is cabin fever is real, and you got a lot of people out there who are just itching to get out there and do something, hopefully to help themselves. And whether it be with social distancing, hopefully with social distancing, but somehow get out there and do stuff for themselves. And if they aren't already, a lot of people are suffering. They're hungry. So those are, I want to put them in two categories, but sometimes they're the same. And they're feeling that, hey, you officials, you are the authority. You told us to stay home. We followed directions. Now you need to tell us what we can do now. And unfortunately, the governor is the authority that's saying, hey, stay home. And they're saying, okay, now Governor, a lot of us are suffering. What can we do? So the governor, as you said earlier, it seems as though she is coming up with a lot of things that we cannot do. Very few things that we can do, and whether that is, how much truly she is to blame, and the fact checkers have to determine that, and history will tell how much she is to blame. I'm sure you with your sage wisdom, can already give a good guess as to how much she's to blame. Probably due to the fact that she's a Democrat, you probably assign the majority of it.
I can usually blame almost everything on Democrats, another Joe. So that's true.
And you're up front with it, Uncle Bob. So you can't blame you because you're not disingenuous. And it's true. The buck stops with the government officials, the authorities, the leaders, who are also our public servants, and who have the brass ring of leadership. And with that brass ring comes a lot of responsibility and and a lot of scrutiny and criticism comes with the territory. So a lot of us can attempt to sympathize with the governor, but Governor, you're telling us what we cannot do and not a lot of what we can do. So having said that, repeated that a second time, I just want to say thanks for your time with Bob, and I'll just keep listening to you and Martinez.
Well, let me respond here just for a minute, Real Joe Cruz.
Sure.
First of all, I'm sorry, another Joe, not Real Joe Cruz. First of all, I don't want the governor telling me what I can do. That's not the governor's job. The governor's job is to govern and to execute the laws of Guam, but not to tell us what we can and can't do, which she seems to take to like a duck to water. We have our individual rights as guaranteed by the Constitution and the Organic Act, which don't seem to make a whole lot of difference to her. And then finally, you referred to her as a leader, and I see it on the Facebook almost every day. Don't call those folks leaders. They are not leaders. They're supposed to be public servants. So if we're looking for leadership, it shouldn't come from them. We should, unless they want to set a good example that we can all follow, and of course the governor hasn't done that. So I think if you're looking for leaders, you might find it faster on your Facebook or at 93.3 on your FM dial or someplace like that, another Joe.
Good call, Bob. Appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Okay. So that was another Joe, and then I go from there to Martinez. Good afternoon, Martinez.
Good afternoon, Senator. Thanks for those nice words, another Joe. You know, Senator, when I read today's Post editorial, if Ken Leongaro got in the legislature, that guy could do a lot of good. And I think the public would like to see him in the legislature. It would be interesting. And I'll never forget, many years ago, I was at a high school graduation, and there was a political science professor or something that he was chosen to give the commencement speech. And I'll never forget what he said. He says, if you do things for government, you can do more from within than from without. You know, now Ken spent a lot of time outside complaining stuff. Get in there. I think a lot of people, including myself, would like to see what happens if he gets in there. And I told somebody 2 years ago, this guy could win. But, you know, like a boxer, no matter how great you are, you got to train, he's got to campaign. But I really appreciate if this guy run, instead of complaining from the outside, it's easy to call up talk shows and talk and write articles and complain. But get in there and do something. So when I read the editorial, it's like that. You know, like BJ. And I told BJ, I told this to him, right after he left office when he was successful for Bulgaria, I said, you're the best speaker I've ever seen. What he did as a speaker was just obvious, you know? So I hope Ken Younger would consider that. And if he doesn't, then, you know, stop complaining if you're not going to run. You know, give it a try. Do what the great Bob Klitzkie did. The great Bob Klitzkie is the only guy in modern era forever. He got elected. It's only a 2-year term. The only way to see if the public thinks you did a good job is see if you got reelected. Not only did he get reelected, he did better than the 14 or 15 candidates that ran for reelection because one didn't run, than any of them. And that's all Ken's got to do is get in there one term to see if he did a good job, run for reelection, and he might be a Bob Klitzkie. Only 2 senators improved when Klitzkie ran for reelection, Senator Klitzkie in 2004. One went up 25%, Bob Klitzkie went up 30%. That's a fact. So Ken consider that. That's all I got to say, Bob.
Well, thanks for your kind words, Mark, but I can tell you, I don't think Ken could ever be another Bob Klitzkie unless he gets some elevator shoes or stilts or something like that. He's just not tall enough. And then second, I hold a special place in my heart for those who aren't in office and from the outside of the office are critical and outspoken about what the government does and the government doesn't do. And I'm not so sure about inside being more effective than outside, probably, but I haven't completely decided. So I think Ken serves a real purpose doing what he's doing outside, and I wouldn't want him to stop. I wouldn't want to discourage him, Mark.
Well, this is the way I feel. Maybe he might see how it is when you get inside. That's the only way, you know, if you get inside to see how it is. But the stuff I said about Senator Klitzkie's true, and all of that is facts. But I just wanted to get into that. I'll continue listening, Bob. Thank you.
Well, it's hard to argue with someone who seems to be so well informed, Martinez, so thanks a lot for calling. Okay, so next we've got Dr. Tom. What's his last name?
It's not Tool, sir.
It's not Tool.
It's Pool.
Okay, so we got to take a short break here, and we'll come back to Dr. Tom Pool.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
One of the easiest ways to prevent the spread of COVID-19 is to wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Let this message help you time it. Start soaping up now. The virus can survive in the air for 3 hours, on copper for 4 hours, on cardboard for 24 hours, and on plastic and stainless steel for 72 hours. Disinfect phones and common household surfaces like tables, doorknobs, light switches, countertops, toilets, faucets, and sinks, desks, including computer keyboards and kids' toys. Choice Broadcasting reminds you to stay safe and stay clean. You can rinse now.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Call 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at horizonpropertiesguam.com.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
Music to my ears, more Tall Tales. There's only one thing that's better than Tall Tales, that's more Tall Tales. Okay, so we've got Dr. Tom Poole on the line, and after that I've got our Carl. What a surprise. Good afternoon, Dr. Tom Poole.
Good afternoon, Judge. Thank you. I just wanted to second the nomination for Ken Leon Guerrero. I just think he would do a remarkable job in the legislature, and I agree with you. He's doing a great job where he is. You know, we're not friends, Mr. Leon Guerrero and I. I've met him several times because I was on the Guam EPA board for 5 years, and he came to, it felt like nearly every meeting, and he was usually there to criticize the performance of the board. So I wasn't exactly happy to see him every time. But, you know, I have to admit that I found his arguments were always cogent and logical, and very often I had to admit, you know, he's right. We could have handled that better. So I really think having someone like that out there it just makes government better, even if it makes it uncomfortable when you're on the receiving end of that. It's a really valued service, and although I don't want him to stop doing what he's doing now, I think he could possibly serve us even better on the inside if he would consider it.
Well, good points, Tom. You know, there's a British philosopher, George Bernard Shaw, who said something along the lines of, all progress depends on unreasonable men. And I think that,
I hadn't heard that one.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of truth to that, because a reasonable man is not going to buck the traces. He's not going to put himself in a position where people find him disagreeable, or he's going to go against the status quo, etc. And there's no progress. All progress depends on unreasonable men. Of course, nowadays,
you know, that's well said.
Of course, nowadays we would, if I were to say that in the wrong audience, I'd be scalped, because I'd have to say all progress depends on unreasonable men and women. But of course, the women would say that's an impossibility. So what are you talking about?
Or perhaps redundant.
Yeah. Yeah, superfluous, yeah.
Judge, thank you very much.
Okay, Tom, it's always a pleasure. Okay, we've got our Carl, followed by Frenchie. Good afternoon, our Carl.
Well, I feel privileged. I'm the warm-up act for Frenchie.
Yeah.
That's a privileged position. Yeah, I just wanted to comment about the suggestions that Ken run for office. I really think he should not do that. There are some people who need to be in the legislature. There are other people who need to be on the outside. There are 160+ thousand people on Guam. We can't, just because someone criticizes doesn't mean they automatically need to run for the legislature. There are people who can form their thoughts, can analyze well, can bring up suggestions and criticisms. And we need critics on the outside. The people on the inside, the legislature, need to feel the breath of the public on their back all the time. Because we've entrusted them with power, we've entrusted them with vast amounts of money. So that is really critical. We don't need more bureaucrats in the legislature. We need doers. And I hope at some point we would start to move away from this tendency to view the election as a popularity contest and view it more as that we're employers trying to employ the best employees to get the job done. And what the employer normally does when he sits down with an employee, if he's a good employer, he wants to look at his resume and he wants to know, okay, what have you done with your knowledge? Okay, you've gone to college. What have you actually achieved? What have you improved at every job you've been at? Have you increased the revenues? Have you cut costs? Have you improved efficiencies? What specifically, backed up with numbers and figures and hard data, what have you done? I don't care about your handshake and I don't care about your nice personality. I want to know what have you done, because that really says a lot about what you can do for me as an employer or us as voters. I thought of a quote by our favorite economist and social philosopher, Thomas Sowell. People who enjoy meetings should not be in charge of anything. And I think that is very true. We don't need people who love the process, who love all the pomp and circumstance. We need people who have a sense of urgency. They want to get in there and they want to get things accomplished. They want to fix the hospital. They want to fix our education system. They want to fix our prison. They want to get things done, and they don't have time for a lot of resolutions, endless resolutions, and doing all these constant ceremonies and all this other side issues. They want to get things done. They want to improve things. There are people who have it in their personality wherever they're at. They want to make things better, and that's who we need in the legislature. That's who we need in the governor's office, in my opinion.
Well, Carl, there are those who run for senator not because they want to be senator, but because they want to be prince or princess. And we don't have that job description in our GovGuam TOE, so the closest they can come is senator. And, of course, that entails the large plush office, maybe at $3,000 a month, a large staff, 10 or 12 people, to include a manservant, a maidservant, a chauffeur, a footman, and so on. A limited amount of actual show-up work, no accountability to anyone, a fair salary, $55,307 a year, and the ability to show up at innumerable social events 15 minutes after the social event started and be effusively welcomed by the host, who gives the senator the opportunity to make a grand entrance. How can you make a grand entrance if you're on time? All of these shiny objects are the reasons that some people run for senator. Some run for senator because they're looking for a job. Some look for senator because they're looking for an opportunity for service. And it's up to us to sort that out during the electoral process. And we don't do a very good job, frankly. And it's the Ken Leon Guerreros of the island that really help us with that sorting process.
I absolutely agree. I think Ken is making a valuable contribution right where he is. I would be extremely disappointed if he were to run for office, because he would just get tangled up in a bunch of bureaucracy and endless stuff going on. I think he's proven himself to be an effective critic. I mean, some people say he over-criticizes, but I think he's doing fine. He's rocking the boat. He's making the establishment uncomfortable, which I think is a good thing in any bureaucracy or super bureaucracy. I like disruptors, and I think Ken is a disruptor. I think you're a disruptor. I think Candid News is a disruptor. I think, who's it, our friend Romeo Carlos is a disruptor. They question things, and they ask inconvenient questions. They ask embarrassing questions, and I think that's a good thing. That's why we have our Bill of Rights.
Let's put Troy Torres on that list too, huh?
Oh, absolutely, yes, another disruptor. Those are the people, you and the people on that list, give me hope for the future of Guam. If there were no people like that, those disruptors, I would be very, very depressed. But every day I wake up and there are people like you and Ken and Troy and Carlos, Romeo, and the other disruptors. I have hope for the future of Guam. I really do. I'm optimistic. I'm very, very optimistic. As long as we have voices like that who question things and go against convention and ask inconvenient, sometimes embarrassing questions, I have hope. Anyway, Bob, I've said enough, and thank you. Your show is always interesting. I can feel my brain cells multiplying as I listen. So thank you so much.
Thanks for the kind words, Arco. I'll talk to you later. Okay, and then next on the list we have the one and only Frenchie. Good afternoon, Frenchie.
Good afternoon. Did you ring? Did you ring?
That was the real Joe Cruz.
No, that was me.
Oh, okay.
I got my my own special effect. So, yesterday I was wishing that people would start a conversation on all those First Amendment issues. I guess we started seeing some movement. As soon as your show was over, I saw that Candid was all over it like a fireman on a blaze. And I didn't check Romeo because usually he doesn't like too many religious issues. But I will make an effort this evening to look at what he has to say. I saw this morning Ray was all over it too. He even called you to have your advice. And I think Tim Rohr also intervened. So it was interesting. Talking about Tim Rohr, I saw he wrote two very good articles in the Jungle Watch, which is his blog, and he makes some very good points, asking the priests to take their responsibilities. So it will be very interesting to see what is going to happen this weekend. I understand the Archbishop and some of his priests were meeting on the subject today. So this issue is not going away. I mean, it's going to be in the front of our struggles here on the island for quite a while. And I think the church has a great opportunity to regain some of the luster that they had lost with Apuram. And it's quite interesting to watch. Now, it's also interesting to see the lamestream media. They have not covered too much out of this, even though it's a big story, except for the Post, who ran a story this afternoon, albeit 20 hours after Candid News. But at least they are trying. The others are just absent. They are always doing that wait and see type of game and see if they don't have to deal with it. It's almost that they are happy that the story doesn't break. So I guess they don't want to bite the hand that feeds them. That's kind of my impression on this. But the governor has, without making too much noise, has decided to extend the isolation order from May 5th until June 5th. So now we're going again for 30 days extra, which is going to make that issue with the religious service even more important because that's, you know, Adelup is all over the board on this. One day they celebrate they have no new cases, the next day they are all gloom and doom, and but they don't give us their thought. You know, they don't give us their science behind it. They're all over the board. One day they take all the statistics from the U.S. which have been proven to be catastrophic and not real, and the next day it's almost as if they want to justify what they are doing, knowing that it has nothing to do with the pandemic. It has more to do with what the Bank of Guam wants to do with their money. And, you know, the conflict of interest is becoming more and more obvious between the governor and her family and the Bank of Guam. And it's the big taboo. Nobody wants to talk about it except maybe Romeo and Candid. And it's kind of sad that, you know, there is kind of that big taboo in the media talking about this. It's a big deal. It really is a big deal. And another story that nobody has reported much about except Ray this morning is the fact that the Attorney General has sent a memo to all the U.S. attorneys giving them instruction to follow up on local government abusing the emergency powers at the cost of people's civil rights and following the Constitution. He said, you know, the crisis does not justify us giving away our rights. So it's very interesting.
True enough, Francie. True enough. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think this weekend is going to be quite interesting to see what the church is doing. I understand they want to go ahead with masses on the parking lots. I don't know how they're going to manage that. There's a lot. They have a lot of things to think about, and we'll see if the government takes the bait and try to crack down, especially with Commissar DeNorcy, who seems to have a tendency to be kind of putting diktat out there. You know, she still has not. I guess now. Dr. McNich and everybody else have been able to see both letters, the one from the liturgical commission to the governor and the director, and the answer from the director, which frankly I found very flippant and insulting. And she doesn't explain at all what is the logic behind her diktat, which is, this is what it is. This is, well, I'm the boss, I'm going to do whatever I want, and you are not going to celebrate Mass on the parking lots.
True enough.
You're not going to do baptism. So what about if one of those kids die, right?
So maybe what we should do is chip in and buy her a silver helmet liner so that she could present herself like a true dictator.
Oh, okay. I thought you wanted to buy her a one-way ticket to Wuhan. So, all right. Well, that was my little take on today, and I see this week should be quite interesting as far as seeing all those people are actually letting the mask down, and we're going to see what they're going to come up with. It's always fascinating to see those people that are pretending to be defenders of women's rights and minority rights and blah, 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 always being the worst offenders when it comes down to everybody's civil rights.
True enough.
Yeah. So we'll keep on listening to all the guests that we have. Maybe Dr. Matnich will call you back.
Maybe so.
All right. Bye, Bob.
Thank you, Frenchie. Okay.
paraus utsia rerewesemwer COVID-19 ika coronavirus. Förriwisom omkosap nafeten, kope betsökkyn, kope riveriböts, me kope warnefits. Toa seriaravas pura pekkökyra, tsöydaan isemmun. Esa porkotsu ike tsuffegen. Esa porkapong, esa porfarropats ike kareffegen giri arabas. Kiitsi pon nautin norim. Arapara betsökkyder iris. Anna faava sösö, om teiso, me ammoge kioboge viennim. Paryn faitavin. Arapara rivöts, kopo ykykyo vattapa arabas. Toru boom murira varto sirireri veirisin. Kosa vattapa vesom, potum me avum. Toru fitsi boom meia kiatta porajan. Ei paraus, aitto seri, atski office manuelu, McCunison Resource Center, Mikko Stacerin, Choice Broadcasting, Kriso Zabur.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Security Title, making sure you actually own the property you think you just bought.
So, okay, here we are. We got about 9 more minutes to the big halftime show. And this is what I got on the card for this afternoon. I've got Commissar DeNorsi versus the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. I've got the vision impaired versus the vision impaired. Yeah, once upon a time, but we can't use the word blind anymore. It's not politically correct. So it's the vision impaired versus the vision impaired, or perhaps leading the vision impaired. And then I had the Bishop versus lockdown, but that's been absorbed into Commissar DeNorsi versus the First Amendment. I've got Tall Tales versus Janella, but that's been absorbed into vision impaired versus vision impaired. And I've got Romeo versus the media, which we'll keep for a while if I don't get to it today. And it really ties in to what our Carl was saying about people, about the necessity to have someone or something or somebody constantly calling out the government. And it ought to be the media. Now, if we were to depend on the daily news, I'll just let that go for a minute. Then I've got Dr. Atlas versus Fauci, or accumulated data versus hypothetical projections. Now, unfortunately, probably no one remembers George Atlas anymore, and the cartoons that used to appear on the back of comic books about someone kicking sand in somebody else's face. You don't remember that, do you, real Joe Cruz?
No, sir, I don't.
That's unfortunate. And then I've got Bob versus Bob, Mansfield versus Fernandez, GRMC versus GMH, Sedfree versus the governor, and MSN, Michael St. Nicholas versus Shimizu. And I know I won't be able to finish Commissar DeNorsi versus the First Amendment, but I can get a good start on it before the big halftime show. So I'm going to go back to the beginning here. You know, we have Chapter 19 in Title 10 of the Government Code, which gives the governor some pretty extensive powers to deal with a public health emergency. And she started right off the bat zeroing out things that I thought were really important. The open government law, the first thing she took her meat axe to was the open government law, and said no more open government. She described it as bureaucracy, etc. And although the case of Gale versus governor of Guam, which dealt with the Governor Berdalio's curfew after Typhoon Pamela, although the court there said that travel, in other words, moving around, is a fundamental right. Governor Leon Guerrero has no problem whatsoever in sticking up those god-awful checkpoints that served no useful purpose at all, were just an inconvenience. And looking back at it now, we're what in the prison business we used to call a power check, where one person exercises his power over another, and just to see what the reaction of the weaker party is. And in the case of a power check, if the weaker party doesn't react properly, then the power checker says, good, I'm going to try something else. I'm going to keep going with this. And I think that's what we saw. We saw a power check, that the governor got away with tremendous nonsense inconvenience out on the highway, and was emboldened by that, and now figures she could do the same thing with other parts of our fundamental rights and freedoms. So then we come along with her list of essential and non-essential, and her what I call physical distance rules. First of all, you could not assemble in a group of 10 people. Had to be less than 10, and then it came down to you can't assemble at all except with people who live in your own household. And Commissar DeNorsi told us she would enforce that by finding if anyone who tested positive for the Wuhan virus, she'd investigate their housing, and if there were vulnerable people in the housing, she would isolate the positive person, send them off to the GovGuam gulag. So we see a continuation of this power checking going on. The list of essential activities did not include the practice of religion. So our bishop, for reasons known only to him, knuckled under and didn't take an aggressive position with respect to not being an essential undertaking. And I would have hoped, if for no other than semantic reasons, the bishop would have come along and said, don't even think in terms of talking about our Catholic religion as non-essential. Because the founders of our country made a decision back in 1791 that the free exercise of religion is essential, and you don't have the ability to change that, Governor Leon Guerrero, so clean up your vocabulary. I wish he'd have at least have said that. But he didn't. He went along with it. And that kind of brings us up to where we are now. So where we are now is that the ecclesiastical, the liturgical, I had the letter here somewhere, Liturgical Council of the Church or something like that, wrote to Commissar DeNorsi and said, we want to have Mass, and we're going to do all of these things, what I would refer to as the Payless rules. Conform to the same restrictions that Payless conforms to as they entertain the general public. Okay, let's break for that big halftime show, and we'll come back to Commissar DeNorsi right after that.
The Point is KUSG, Hagatna, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Keeping food in the pipeline. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. President Trump has used the Defense Production Act again, ordering meat and poultry processing plants to stay open to protect the country's food supply. Workers at several plants were hit with the coronavirus, including a large pork processing plant in Sioux City, South Dakota. Governor Kristi Noem says they're working to restart it.
You know, we're hopeful that within a matter of days that the plant could be back up and running safely, protecting its employees, but also, you know, contributing to our national security. This is a critical infrastructure business. We need it online to feed the people in this country, and it's incredibly important.
Governor Noem on Fox's Hannity. California and New York developing phased-in reopening plans. New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo.
We want to reopen, but we want to do it without infecting more people or overwhelming the hospital system.
But Cuomo also revealing deaths in New York hitting a 4-week low on Monday. But the House of Representatives is canceling its plans to reopen for normal sessions next week. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says congressional doctors have suggested they not return yet. House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy highly critical of the decision.
Congress is elected to be leaders. The American public expect us to uphold the test when they come to us. And right now, we're not doing that.
Representative McCarthy telling Fox's The Ingram Angle Congress should consider themselves essential workers. The Senate's still planning to reconvene on Monday to consider new economic stimulus measures, but Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says that will not include infrastructure projects.
We have an equal interest in doing a infrastructure bill. We don't have an equal interest in borrowing money for future generations to pay for it.
Asian stock markets closing Wednesday mixed. Dow futures trading more than 130 points higher. America is listening to Fox News.
Horizon Properties can empathize with individual property owners during this trying time. The last thing you should worry about is collecting rent or sending a repairman to your property. With their web-hosted property management system, Horizon can reach out to tenants, vendors, and owners alike and maintain the current prohibition requirements. Let Horizon Properties take care of it all. Help flatten the curve by remaining safe at home. Call 646-7616 or 777-7792 or visit horizonpropertiesguam.com. Horizon Properties, always there for you.
During this time of great uncertainty, Security Title is working to support our essential banks. We are working for the family who would have been homeless if their purchase was delayed, for the family's refinancing to lower mortgage payments, for the contractor who has fronted the cost to build a home, and the surveyors, appraisers, inspectors, and the realtors who cannot make a living without selling a house. With our office doors locked and our essential team members complying with all government protocols, in our own small way, Security Title continues to serve our community.
President Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden winning their party's Ohio primaries on Tuesday in a vote mostly done by mail. The former VP picking up the support of the party's 2016 candidate, Hillary Clinton.
Clinton offered her endorsement of Biden Tuesday.
I think one of the hallmarks of your presidency can be a commitment to the kind of transparency that will hopefully begin to rebuild trust.
Former Senate staffer Tara Reid claims former Vice President Joe Biden sexually assaulted her in 1993. And telling Fox News, Hillary Clinton has a history of enabling powerful men to cover up their sexual predatory behaviors and their inappropriate sexual misconduct. Although Biden has not addressed the claim personally, his campaign denies the allegations.
Fox's Jackie Heinrich. Kwasi Mfume is returning to Congress, winning a special election in the Baltimore area to serve out the term of the late Representative Elijah Cummings, a seat that Mfume previously held. The Treasury Department approving an additional $50 billion in loans to small businesses yesterday. Banks still complaining a bottleneck at the Small Business Administration is severely slowing the process. More school districts discovering at-home schooling isn't all they'd hoped it would be.
Washington, D.C., Bibb County, Georgia, and several other districts are ending instruction early because of the stress involved with online learning. D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser says kids aren't getting off easy.
Our hope would be to make up that 3 weeks in some way at the start of the next school year.
Bibb County Superintendent Dr. Curtis Jones tells Fox affiliate WGXA they're looking at the possibility of social distancing even next year.
We have a classroom set of about 28 students. What if I told you I thought 14 of them would be in class every other day, but the other 14 who aren't in class would be online?
Rob Dawson, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
As we stand up to coronavirus by standing back with social distancing, Bank Pacific reminds you that you can come to the bank without going to the bank. Use many of our other delivery platforms like online banking at bankpacific.com, accessing cash at our ATMs, shopping with our debit cards. For businesses, we have secure cash and check drop windows, and we are employing a new smarter mobile app with remote deposit capture in the next few weeks. We're all in this together, and together we will win. Bank Pacific. Brothers but branches, we place roots. Member FDIC.
Cocoa Coffee Company is now available at Circle K. Single origin coffee beans carefully sourced and locally roasted to give you the freshest cup of coffee Guam has to offer. Grab a cup that's brewed every 30 minutes or purchase a bag of the locally roasted whole beans. Flavors now serving: light medium roasted Ethiopia and medium dark roasted Jamaican Blue Mountain. Exclusively available at Circle K. With every Cocoa Coffee Company purchase, a portion of the proceeds will go towards the Cocoa Recovery Program.
GRMC's cardiology department treats most complex heart problems. In our catheterization lab, cardiologists use imaging equipment to treat clogged arteries that can cause heart attacks or heart failure. We perform balloon angioplasty, stenting, and other life-saving cardiac procedures. If you suffer from a heart condition, have your provider refer you to GRMC's cardiology clinic at 645-5500. GRMC, where patients are partners.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
So here we are after that wonderful halftime show that still, it gets better every day. Even in this time of Wuhan virus, we've got something to cheer us on. That big halftime show on Tall Tales and that climactic barrage of cannon fire at the end. It just really pumps us up, doesn't it, Real Joe Cruz?
Absolutely, sir.
Yeah. So I was talking about the item on the card called Commissar DeNorcy versus the First Amendment. And I should have kicked it off with a submission from our poet laureate who says, for several weeks we've had a pass to stay home and skip Sunday Mass. We're left in the lurch, not going to church. This is quite an unholy morass. Couldn't have said it better myself, Andrew. So, bringing you up to date then, when the governor and Commissar DeNorcy determined that the church wasn't an essential function, and in effect said you can't have your religious ceremonies, any of them, including Mass. She did that, or they did that. If there's a difference between she and they, I don't think there is. They did that in complete disregard to the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. And I read it this morning or this afternoon instead of the Second Amendment, but I'll read the pertinent part again. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So, you know, people look at it and they say, well, Congress, what does Congress got to do with this? And here's the short answer to that. In the beginning, the Bill of Rights were meant to protect the states from what became the national government. So the U.S. government, the federal government, couldn't pass laws prohibiting the free exercise of religion nor respecting the establishment of a religion, but that did not apply to the states. Massachusetts had an established religion until 1820. State established religions were not uncommon. Gradually, they were phased out, and in the 1920s, the Supreme Court, in a case called Gitlow versus New York, said that actually the Bill of Rights, although designed to protect the states from the government, could also apply to state governments, and that there would be a selective incorporation of the Bill of Rights as the cases came along and presented the opportunity. I don't remember which case it was where the Supreme Court said, oh yeah, states can make no law respecting the establishment religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof either. So that free exercise clause of the Constitution applies to the states, territories. We have a similar position in our Organic Act. So if our governor, who swore to protect the Constitution of the United States, you know, if they had an inkling about the spirit of the Constitution and the actual mechanism of the Constitution, they would have tipped their hat to it as they passed these regulations about physical distance, something along the lines of knowing that the First Amendment, the United States Constitution, provides for free exercise of religion. Our purpose is to allow for the free exercise of religion to the greatest extent possible, consistent with public safety. But they didn't say that. They just came along and said, churches, not essential. Getting together in crowd, churches, you can't do that. As though the First Amendment were no more than last year's Christmas cards. So the bishop, as I said earlier, didn't write to the governor and say, hey, don't you dare call us non-essential. And we have a First Amendment right to practice our religion, just like, you know, like every other religion. And we want to do that. He didn't do that. The bishop just said, okay, let all Catholics know, no Mass, no funerals, no this, no that, no the other thing. And then I found the name of that organization, the Liturgical Commission of the Archdiocese Liturgical Commission the chairman wrote a letter to Commissar Gofigan laying out all kinds of precautions that the church would take if it were to conduct Mass and other ceremonies, you know, the physical distance, the masks, the whole thing, a very comprehensive list of things that it would do. And this is the letter that came back 2 days later. Dear Father Paul, this is in response to your April 22 letter regarding liturgical recommendations. I have read and appreciate your recommendations. DPHSS is identifying pockets of Wuhan. As you know, I always change COVID-19 to Wuhan, even if it's in somebody else's letter. I just correct their bad vocabulary here on Tall Tales. DPHSS is identifying pockets of Wuhan virus infection and interrupting its transmissions within our community. The goal of eliminating Wuhan virus involves expanding laboratory testing for individuals with Wuhan virus, mild illness, and active cases, findings of the virus among the vulnerable population, especially those living in isolated areas. Moreover, social distancing is an effective strategy in reducing the further spread of the disease. She might as well have added that a king usually takes a queen, or that 2 + 2 = 4. Maybe she borrowed a script from one of the guardsmen down there at the checkpoints. And she goes on to say, currently the number of Wuhan virus positive cases continues to rise, as evident, and there are 141 cases as of April 25. Furthermore, Executive Order 2020-9 is still in effect, and it has not been lifted at this time. So, Father Paul, take that book, that black book that you carry around that says Bible on the front of it, and your catechism, and the one that says Missal, all those other books, put those in storage, because you aren't going to need those, because Executive Order 2020-9 is still in effect. And it has not been lifted at this time. Thus, Department of Public Health and Social Services neither supports nor approves any sacramental services, even though safety precautionary measures are in place as delineated in your letter. We have made our decision. Our decision is final. Or as commissar, right? Is making decision. Is making decision final. And is sending to Gulag anyone who is not abiding by decision. Yeah, Nigavaru Porosky. Yeah. So that's Commissar DeNorsi. Commissar DeNorsi's idea of Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So if I were to put on my lawyer hat and consider what the church, what the government has done, they say, grocery store, you can remain open, you can do business, but you can't. But you have to make sure that you only let a limited number of people into the store, and that you have to make sure that they stay 6 feet apart, and other requirements like that. What we'll call from now on the Payless rules. If a church that's protected by the First Amendment of the Constitution comes along and says, we want to do our services and we're going to follow the Payless rules, and Commissar DeNorsi comes along and says, we deny your request. Is that a legal problem? Law and Order notebooks there, Real Joe Cruz. Yeah, that's a legal problem. Okay, so I got a couple callers on the line. I've got one of the usual suspects called Another Joe, and then I've got Tim Rohr. So I'm going to go with Tim Rohr and then Another Joe. Good afternoon, Tim.
Hey, Bob. Just a couple of things. You know, when I first logged in, I have to listen to you on Facebook because I can't get radio where I'm at. And I ended up listening to the first hour of yesterday's program instead of your live program.
Well, you can't go wrong listening to Tall Tales. Yesterday, today, it's all good, Tim. But anyhow, go ahead.
But actually, it gave me. I was able to hear Frenchie's whole speech there, and that's good because he brings something up that I wanted to point out. He brought up the fact that it was the bishops' conferences who imposed on the bishops to close their churches. It wasn't the government. It was the bishops themselves who closed it, and that's true. But I want to point something out here. That bishops' conferences have no ecclesial authority. They don't get to tell bishops what to do. It's just a conference. They get together, they write stuff, whatever. But the conference does not get to dictate policy for the diocese. Every bishop is basically his own pope, his own diocese. He's not beholden to anybody, not even the Pope, which is why we had such problems with Apron, because the Vatican couldn't figure out, what to do with him, because no bishop had ever been, tried by the Vatican before. They had to create something completely new. That's why the Apron used to say, nobody can get me, not even the Pope. So, we can't. I haven't heard Archbishop Burns, blame the Bishops' Conference yet or ever. But that's just simply not going to fly. Archbishop Burns has absolute and complete authority over over what happens in this diocese. So I just wanted to clarify that. The other thing I wanted to
If I could just jump in for a second, Tim, I think that the average layperson doesn't understand that in the Catholic Church, the bishop in charge of a diocese is almost all powerful, correct?
Absolutely, all powerful, and he doesn't work for anybody. Doesn't answer to anybody either, except to God. Unless something really goes bad, and which is what we just saw, but it's rare, that the Vatican can come in and do anything about it.
Right. So go ahead, Tim.
Okay, so the second thing, real quick, is I got the part from the DeNarcy letter. We don't support or approve sacramental services. I think the administration, and we have to understand, this isn't DeNarcy talking. This is Lou Leon Guerrero. That's what we all have to do. We can't be saying, Department of Public Health is saying no. No, Lou Leon Guerrero is the governor. She's saying no, and they're giving themselves away. Or she's giving herself away, because when she says you don't support or approve, the right way to have said that was, while we support your right to worship and sacramental services, we cannot approve based on, whatever, this, right?
Right.
But no, she says, we don't support. And if you just take that in by itself, we don't support sacramental services. This is about crushing the church. There isn't any secret here. Who's the abortion queen on this island for the last 30 years? The governor, and she's proudly so. Up until the COVID thing, the big crisis was we didn't have anybody to kill babies on this island. And we had to recruit them and, whatever. So, and then there's some funny stuff going on. And it's going to come out, and I kind of know where it's going to go. But I think Frenchie brought it up, too, that Bank of Guam being the largest creditor. And I believe that certain members of clergy, not just largest creditor, but I thought Bank of Guam is also the largest contributor to the Archdiocese of Agana in terms of financial contributions for this project and that project and that kind of thing. Anyway, it's a large contributor, and all of the bank accounts and mortgages, or just about all of them, are in Bank of Guam. So there's something to that, and I think that there's some fear. But the bottom line is that this is an awesome. I brought it up in ratio. This is a really great opportunity for the church leaders to restore faith in the church and image by just basically doing what they're supposed to do by virtue of their ordination, and not kowtowing, not worshiping Caesar. Right now they're worshiping Caesar. Caesar, please let us gather. We'll be nice. We'll be kind. All that kind of stuff. That's going to hurt the church more than the Aperon thing did. If we back down now, and if we say, they're not letting us do it, it's just a great opportunity for them to come out and actually say, we're not going to worship Caesar. We worship God. Come and arrest me, Governor.
Interesting, Tim. Yeah, and this would go a long way towards counteracting all of the bad feelings that are residual from the Aperon reign, wouldn't it?
Well, we need a hero. We need a hero. We need a leader. And you know what? If the priests are listening, stop sending us lay people out to fight your battles. We'll stand behind you, but you guys need to lead from the front here.
Interesting
I'm getting
points.
a little bit upset here.
Interesting points, Tim. Let's talk about bishops' conferences.
Okay.
Guam is not, our archdiocese is not in the American Bishop Conference, is it?
I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to bring that point up too. We're not. We're in a very small, probably the smallest conference in the world, basically Oceania is a name for it, CPAC. But no, we're not part of the United States at all in terms of conferences.
How did we ever find ourselves there?
So this is a good story. So we used to be part of the United States, but Archbishop Flores, well, how do I say it nicely? But anyway, Bishop Flores wanted to be an archbishop. In order to be an archbishop, you have to be an archdiocese. In order to be an archdiocese, you have to have what's called two suffragan dioceses. you have to have somebody underneath you. Well, we were actually a suffragan diocese of San Francisco back in 1976 or whenever this happened. And somebody, I don't know whose bright idea it was, whether it was Archbishop Flores or who it was, but said, "Hey, we want to be an archdiocese." So they said, "Okay, great, you can, we'll let you go, but you got to have 2 suffragan dioceses." So our 2 suffragan dioceses are Chala and Kanoa and the Marshalls. Those are supposedly under Guam. That's why we're an archdiocese and they're a diocese.
I see.
And it doesn't really mean anything because this bishop doesn't have any authority over the bishops of the suffragan diocese. Why it has to be that way, I don't know. But we get the title of Archdiocese of Agana. I mean, this Archdiocese of Agana is smaller than the little Los Angeles suburb that I grew up in terms of population, right? And we were just a little podunk parish on the edge of Los Angeles. So,
did I lose him? Yeah, I lost him. Okay, Tim, sorry I lost you. So I'm going to go to another Joe, but I just peeked out of the corner of my eye here and saw an interesting dialogue between Richard V. Leon and Jose Martinez that I think I need to jump in on. Richard says, Bishop Flores involved himself with Governor Paul Calvo against past teacher strike. Separation of church and state did not happen. Jose comes back, what exactly do you mean by separation of church and state? Are you saying Bishop Flores was prohibited from supporting anything beyond the church? And this separation of church and state is another one of these phrases that kicks around. People kind of like innocent until proven guilty. People think they know what it means. But separation of church and state, the free exercise clause, doesn't mean the church has no ability to deal with government. It means that the government has no ability to deal with the church. That's what free exercise means. When it comes to a religious authority speaking out on spiritual matters, that's their job description. So a priest who comes along and says, senators who vote for abortion bills, you are not being good Catholics, you can't say, separation of church and state, because that's the bishop's job. Now, if the legislature passes a bill and says priests are prohibited from talking about anti-abortion measures, then you got something. We could spend a little time on this, but that's not what separation, even assuming what you say is correct, Richard, that Bishop Flores involved himself with the governor during the teacher strike, it doesn't get you into talking about separation of church and state. Okay, I got, Tim is back on the air, Tim.
Sorry, Bob, are you there?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I got cut off somehow, but that's okay. I think I gave you the history of how we became. So basically, yeah, they let us go from San Francisco, and I'm not sure exactly when CPAC was formed, but they took all the little dioceses in Oceania and made a bishops' conference out of it. I think there's about seven places, but it's so spread out. There's no common culture. There's no anything that would unite us, or any reason to even be in a conference and to have anything cohesive. So everybody pretty much just does their own thing, and they get together once a year for a get together, and that's about it.
But our stationery can say Archdiocese of Agana, right?
Yep.
And the Pope can and did prohibit Apeiron from using the title Archbishop, right?
Right, and I believe he's prohibited from presenting himself even as a bishop.
Yeah. So had he not maneuvered things around so that we're in CPAC, the Pope could not have stopped him from calling himself Archbishop. If you see what I'm driving at. I guess I lost Tim again. Okay, Tim. I'm going to go to another Joe. If you want to call back, fine. Maybe we maybe we exhausted the subject. Maybe not, but it's up to you. Another Joe, thank you for your patience.
Bob, yeah, actually, I think you're talking about two different bishops, Bishop Flores and then the Bishop Apron who seceded.
Yeah, I did. I talked about.
I think that call dropped too, sir.
Yeah, okay. So to clear up what another Joe mentioned, well, I'll do that after the seventh inning stretch. Maybe you could fix the phone there, another Joe.
I'll try, sir.
I mean, real Joe Cruz.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his Smile team. Suite 119 in the East West Business Center, Upper Tumon. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his Smile team.
They make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Call 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at horizonpropertiesguam.com.
Well, here we are. I think we're getting jammed. You younger folks wouldn't remember this, but back during the Cold War, the United States had radio stations called Radio Free Europe and Voice of America that broadcast into communist bloc countries in the languages of those communist countries, broadcast the truth to counteract communist propaganda. So the communist response to that was to go on that frequency and create a noise so that no one could hear the broadcast from the Voice of America and Radio Free Europe. I wonder if the governor's doing the same thing with our phone connections, is hacking the phone lines and cutting our callers off before they can make all their points. Maybe, maybe not. Okay, so I've got another Joe who was on the Ferris wheel but fell out of the chair. And then I've got Senator Chris after that. So go for it, another Joe.
Good Bob. I hope that's not the case, but it makes for entertaining radio anyway. It's better than dead air, right?
Yeah.
So, so I was thinking that Mr. Rohr was talking about two different bishops. I'm not sure they were both archbishops. Bishop Flores, and then the bishop that succeeded him was Bishop Apron.
Yeah.
So. I think he was saying that Bishop Flores initiated this separation from San Francisco, and then from there, what he was saying.
I think that he blamed that on Apron, another Joe.
Oh, well, I know he brought up Bishop Flores. I'm not sure exactly why.
I brought up. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Okay. Well, the reason I called was that word of mouth was that tomorrow Governor Lulian Guerrero will be making a speech, which will clarify, I guess, the existing executive orders. I'm not sure. Have they run out? Have they run their course already? Look them up.
Well, she has the ability to, under Chapter 19 of Title 10, to put these emergencies in place for 30 days. So her executive orders have had 30-day, what I would call fuses on them, But recently she enacted an executive order that, with one exception, repromulgated those executive orders. So she may be going to be talking about this tomorrow.
Yeah, so that's probably what it's about, and I'm guessing that she probably needs to think about the other members of her political party, because I have a strong impression listening to word of mouth on the radio, and that a lot of people are frustrated, and they might take it out in her political party this next election. But having said that, yep, that's going to happen tomorrow. I'm not sure what time, but hopefully we get to hear from you all about it when you come on the air. So, with regards to the, I was thinking about the separation of church and state. The impression is that it should be clarified as not the creation of a state religion, but also not excluding, in fact, including the faith-based church organizations, having inclusiveness, and I think that would be the distinction. So if people are if whichever political party is attempting to confuse the constituents of the faithful who want to practice their Christian faith, then I think the impression is, do you feel that you are being excluded from worshiping your faith? If so, then that does not necessarily follow the definition of separation of church and state. In fact,
hang on a second. Let's not use this phrase separation of church and state, because I'm not sure anybody but me really understands what it means.
Exactly. So we should defer to you, Bob.
We have a section in the Constitution that talks about the free exercise of religion, and that same clause talks about establishment of religion. Now, I will take a minute and explain what an establishment of religion is. In the United Kingdom, the established religion is the Church of England. In other words, the government supports the Church of England. You go back to your English history, Henry VIII, Anne Boleyn, the creation of the Anglican Church, etc. But that's what establishment of religion means. So we can't have an official state religion in the United States, but we do have the right to free exercise of religion. And to squeeze that into the phrase separation of church and state doesn't work very well. So when I hear someone, basing his argument on, well, that's not separation of church and state, I make a note that person probably doesn't know what he's talking about. But go on with your story, another Joe.
Or they're trying to confuse us, right? They're attempting to confuse us and shame us into keeping quiet about it. But having said that, my question, I guess, would be: so do candidates for the legislature, do they have a right to go into into the church and announce during usually right before the end of the Mass, right before the priest says the final blessing, they usually allow for announcements for the community. So would a prospective candidate for senator in the legislature, would they have the right to say, hey, this is who I am, and I'm running for the legislature right before the final blessing in the Mass?
No. Absolutely not. See, the free exercise, the clause is to protect the church from the government. It's not to protect the government from the church. So, no, a senatorial candidate couldn't force his way into the Mass to campaign. Although I've seen candidates for office and incumbents behaving themselves before and after the Mass as though they're campaigning, but that's a different story.
Thanks for your time, Uncle. I appreciate it.
Okay, another Joe. Good talking to you. And let's see, I've got former Senator Chris Duenas on the line. Good afternoon, Chris.
Happy day, Your Honor, Marine, and my favorite talk show host, Senator Bob Klitzkie. I was going to take a break today. I always listen, but I try to call and make some pithy comments. But listening to another Joe, and I just wanted to share my experience on what you're discussing with regard to church and state discussion. And yes, I had the privilege of getting information from you directly on what that exactly means. And I draw to an experience where I had several constituents who approached me on an issue when the Catholic Daughters and others will circulate, and it's purely voluntary whether you want to, especially if you identify as a Catholic and you are a member of a diocese or a church or any parish, really. And they will give you a questionnaire, and they don't say you have to fill it out or don't fill it out or whatever else, but it asks you a series of questions as to whether or not you believe in the Catholic doctrine of the non-negotiables. And I participate in that because I have no problem, because I understand, my faith, and I believe according to my faith. However, if whatever vote I took in the legislature, if something went against my conscience or against my faith or whatever vote, that has no bearing. The church is not going to particularly excommunicate me on that issue. Of course, I weigh my decisions, but when I was confronted by several constituents on this, I basically used your fundamental analysis, which is that the right for me to participate in a questionnaire asking as to whether or not I believe in the fundamentals of the church and the non-negotiables is my individual right, and I can participate in that with regard to my faith. The reason why I believe in these things is exactly for the reason you explained, Senator Bob, which is the reverse is for the government to intrude on the church's right to have its influence on issues to where they have a say.
Exactly.
They have a voice in policy.
Right.
However, the policy, ends up coming out, and what the end result is, they don't have governing policy, but they have the ability to opine on policy.
That's exactly how it works out. That any religion has the right to try to influence government to go in a direction that I guess I should correct that, they think is appropriate, but the government doesn't have any responsibility to do that. And if the government gets too cozy with a religion, then you're violating the Establishment Clause. And the closest we came here, as far as I remember, was at one time the legislature passed a bill that gave the cathedral a special power rate that was different from other people, other consumers. And somebody went to court, and that was set aside because it was recognizing the establishment of a religion. But that doesn't happen very often.
I wanted to make another observation. This is kind of taking a little bit of a left turn, but I know that you have been, very one of the best roles I thought you ever played as senator, or the role that you did in your responsibility as senator was you really held directors accountable. I'm actually very disappointed. I've had a chance to work with Commandant DeNorsi, and I've always believed and always have in her classified position and her responsibilities as I think she's probably in her third decade of service at public health. I always found her to be very good at what she did and basically provided that great service. I think I'm extremely disappointed in a number of decisions that she's made and a number of positions she's taken. Now, of course, I've got my personal reasons, which I talked about yesterday, in terms of this recent decision that to pen that letter to Father Gofigan. But I'm also a little concerned about a story. It almost comes off as humorous, but it's not humorous. On KUAM, Chris Barnett, with that issue of the chief of staff and his temporary stay, I guess, at Pacific Star. And I think Chris did a good job when she basically asked the director, look, if Joe, if the real Joe just called up and said, I'm not feeling well, I don't want to, I stay with Grandpa and Grandma or Nana and Tata, and can I just go stay at the Pacific Star? And her answer was, oh yeah, of course. We just assess you and then we put you up in a room. I just think that maybe she's doing the best she can, but being put in these compromised positions, I think that I've lost confidence.
Well, and one never knows, is Linda DeNarcy being Linda DeNarcy, or is Linda DeNarcy being Lou Leon Guerrero's cat's paw?
And I think knowing her in her professional capacity, that is a demotion for her.
Being Lou's cat's paw.
Yeah, I think that I've worked with many professionals in government, and individuals that have worked directly with all of what for the amount of time sometimes that we take, and rightfully so, in terms of what the government costs us and us being taxpayers, and the accountability that the government has to have to the people, particularly those who really need help. We rail on the government, and we should. But the bottom line is that I know that that there are a lot of very astute professionals in government, and there are a lot of people who really, really know what they're doing, and really are the backbone of a lot of the agencies. And the fact of the matter is, I find it almost sad sometimes when those who will have a long-term professional career start to get compromised. I almost cringe and feel bad.
Yeah, it's sad. It's an unfortunate fact of life that happens from time to time. And when we see someone who is obviously playing against type, someone who has always conducted, I was about to say himself, but I'm going to correct myself, someone who has always conducted themselves in a particular manner, and then we see an immediate flip-flop that seems to align itself with the powers that be. That's the suspicion, isn't it, Chris?
It is, and like I said, when you've had a tenured career of solid professionalism, it pains me, but it also I'm almost upset too of anyone who would belay that pressure. But I can't make a judgment on anybody's decision on how they decide to execute what they believe and how they believe things are going forward. But Rome is burning right now, and that's the way I see it. I'm just going to call it like I see it, Bob. And I guess just because if I hold somebody in high esteem that I think is being used for a purpose, it hurts my feelings personally, and I just wanted to make that observation.
Well, that's a good observation, Chris. Thanks for sharing that.
Have a great day, Bob. Look forward to the rest of the show.
Okay, Chris. Good talking to you.
As we continue to protect our families and community from the effects of COVID-19, GTA would like to encourage you to use our online services or to call us. If you'd like to pay your bill or need assistance with services, you can chat with us online, connect with us on Facebook, call us at 644-4482, or send us an email at ask@gta.net. Here at GTA, we are committed to keep you and your family safe, healthy, and connected. GTA, we start with you.
Half a day. This is Michelle from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated teams in Guam and on the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
The home stretch. Here we are, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky for the home stretch. We go from Louisville, Kentucky, straight back to the People's Republic of the North Sea. We're going to go to Gulag. Yeah, so I just saw something, this dialogue that's going on Facebook, and I think I better jump in. It's between Richard V. Leon and Jose Martinez. And Jose Martinez says, according to nonprofit statutes, churches may not campaign for specific candidates over another. Correct, Senator Bob, or is that a slippery slope? Well, I'll say this. A church doesn't need to become a nonprofit corporation. A lot of churches do, and I'm not quite sure why they do, but if a church incorporates under Section 501c3, then there are some political restrictions. But a church that is just a church and not an incorporation, I think probably can engage in politics as much as it so desires. And we see that where some Catholic officials will come out against pro-abortion candidates for office. And if you're a Catholic, you figure that's the way it ought to be. Now, Richard V. Leon says this, I stand corrected. Clarity is your understanding, and Bishop Flores had no right to say it was a sin to make a call that neutralized the voice of the common man then and now. And I got to take issue with that, Richard. I know you're a good loyal member of our Tall Tales International listening audience posse, but Bishop Flores had every right to say that it's a sin to oppose the government. Now, you may not agree with it, and as a Catholic, you may think, I don't want my bishop saying stuff like that. But when you're talking in terms of rights, he has a right to do that. And there's nothing in the First Amendment, the Free Exercise Clause or the Establishment Clause, would stand against that right. That's why I don't like to hear this separation of church and state, because it leads to a lot of confusion and misapprehension. So under the Free Exercise Clause, people are free to exercise whatever religion they choose or no religion at all. And the state cannot come down on people and punish them for the religion that they exercise or don't exercise. Now, it's like everything else. It's not an absolute right. You get into some interesting cases with some parts of the redneck part of our country where some religions involve snake worshiping and people get bitten by poisonous snakes and things like that. Although the state can't regulate religion, it can regulate the handling of snakes, if you see the difference. When it comes to the establishment of religion, what it means is that the state is favoring a religion, and that's also prohibited by the First Amendment. But to talk in terms of we got to have separation of church and state, and when that clergyman, that priest, or that minister spoke out against our government, that violates church and state. It just isn't correct. Sorry. And let's see, Jose came back and said, Jose said, with respect to Richard's statement that Archbishop Flores had no right to say it was a sin to make a call that neutralized the voice of the common man, not up till now. And Jose says, and that would be a matter of opinion, not constitutional law. And that's exactly correct. If Archbishop Flores said you should obey the governor, that is not a violation of the First Amendment. And it may not be something that you like, maybe even as a Catholic, but it's not doesn't violate the First Amendment. And trotting out the phrase, separation of church and state adds nothing to the discussion. Okay, the use of the sin concept paralyzed the Chamorro culture. I don't know. I'm just going to leave that alone until I understand what it means. And then Brad Wood lightens up the conversation a little bit by saying, "Can you spell?" And yeah, I can spell it. It looks kind of like a large C if it comes before a name, and then it looks like a large backward C if it comes after a name. I'll give you an example. Titano. Yeah, that's. I hope that helps out, Brad. So you can go up on the top row of keys on your typewriter and go to the 9. Press the Shift key and hit the 9 key, and you'll be able to spell. And then if you push the Shift key and hit 10, you'll be able to spell again. One goes before a name and one goes after. That was an easy question. I wish all my questions were that easy. Okay, we got about 3 more minutes to go, and I haven't quite finished here with Commissar DeNorsi versus the First Amendment. I do have a request, though, for the Real Joe Cruz. Real Joe Cruz, during the last break, I heard a commercial for the Guam Telephone Authority.
Yes, sir.
Where they talked about COVID-19.
Yes, sir.
Can you call them up and correct them on that?
You got it, sir.
Yeah, on Tall Tales, it's Wuhan virus, right?
Yes,
yeah.
sir.
Yeah, I want you to work on that, okay?
Okay, sir, you got it.
Yeah, thank you very much. I thought you'd see it my way. Yeah.
Of course, sir.
Naturally. Okay, so, yeah, I want to spend a little more time on Commissar DeNorsi versus the First Amendment, but I don't have enough time to get into it. And I've got the vision impaired versus the vision impaired, which in earlier times, before we were so hampered by political correctness, I would have said the blind versus the blind, or the blind leading the blind. And it deals with the governor's veto of Bill 335, which would have provided a Wuhan virus bonus to certain government employees. And if there were ever a comedy of errors, it's the governor and her minions' performance on that. And I'll get into that tomorrow. Yeah, well, here we are. We've come to the end of the rainbow for another time, the end of another exciting, informative, exceptional day on Tall Tales. The Real Joe Cruz and I will be back tomorrow. We'll see you then.